Hey, good evening. This is September 11th. Man, I tell you, today has been just thinking about September 11th and just the memories. It's a tough day, I think, for a lot of people. But, we all have to live our lives and keep moving on. And I'm going to spend some time with you guys tonight. So, we've got some interesting things tonight. Let me bring up a little prepared PowerPoint, and we'll talk about that. Whenever I share stuff out here, it always kind of gets wonked up, but we'll we'll get through it. I hope you guys have had a great weekend. We spent some time at a homesteaders fair yesterday, and talked a little bit about bees. We talked a little bit about chickens and gardens and all kinds of stuff. So let's kind of get going here. Today, this is September. Man, I tell you, I'm ready for fall and getting some cool, a little bit cooler weather. Let's see. We'll do. Here's the topics we're going to be covering tonight. We got some welcome, which we're going over now. Some beekeeping tips, some pollinator plants for September. We got a spotlight. We got to talk about some killer bees, mean bees. Are mean bees always killer bees, etc.? I thought it was kind of interesting. A lot of that going on in the news recently. There was a big thing in, I guess, Ohio that somebody got attacked by some bees. And of course, the headlines are always killer bees. Probably not killer bees, but that's when you get sells newspapers and sells advertising. Killer bees always are going to grab some airtime. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at that, and we'll have some Q&A. If you guys have any questions or want to chat, feel free to say hello. Let me put a note in there real quick. There we go. Okay. Beekeeping tips for September. Bees. Rains usually come, and we've started to see a little bit of rain. But I tell you, July and August, we're hit and miss. July, I don't know that we got much rain at all. August, we had a little bit. And going into September, we're going to start. We should start seeing a few more storms coming around in our area. I know others across the country and other places around the world have been hit pretty hard by rain. Here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, not so much rain. Definitely hit and miss, and I'm hoping to get some more rain. That's for sure. Brood production may ramp up again with the decent weather we've been having. You're probably going to see some bees being born. You'll start, if you're looking in your beehives, you'll probably see some more larvae. The queen is probably going to start getting for her winter bee buildup. If you don't know, definitely there is a difference between winter bees and spring bees. The winter bees live considerably longer than your normal spring or summer bees, and they get the hive through winter. So we should see some buildup of winter bees, and that should start fairly soon. And around here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we should see a bit of that, especially because of the nice weather. One of the other things, and I don't know if we have that on here, but swarms. Oh yeah, I see that right. So we may see some swarms with this weather that we've been having. I think I've seen a few reports of swarms that are going out. It's probably not too late in the year to get some swarms if you capture them to get them through winter. The swarms that we get now, I think we're right on the end of being able to get queens available. So if you were to catch a swarm or you needed a queen, we're kind of right on that last little bit of cusp where they're going to have some availability. For the beekeeper, we should be focusing on our bees, the food. We really want to have about 30 pounds of honey stored in our beehives for a 10 frame deep body of bees to get them through winter. If you harvested in the summer or spring, we probably want to get back to maybe feeding them. Although this is an interesting year. The amount of pollen and nectar that I'm seeing on the plants now is far outweighed by what we saw in July. July was awful. We definitely had a significant dearth. I know my hives didn't have a lot of reserves going into the end of July. August, they started to recover a little bit, and I think they're probably collecting some now. When I got into them, just a few days ago, I could see that they were bringing in some nectar. So that's a good sign. Happy to see that. Keep an eye out for those swarming signs. If you have some hives that are a little bit strong or may have some mites, you want to be checking for your swarm signs, making sure you're seeing what you're getting into with your hives. Make sure your hives are queen right, like we mentioned. If you need a queen, we're kind of running into the end of queen season. There's still some available, but they're getting fewer and farther in between. Last chance to treat for diseases and mites. You want to do a mite check. Getting late in the season for treating mites, but with this weather we have in Dallas-Fort Worth, we still have some time. That's for sure. Although that can change at a moment's notice, and we all know how that is. Begin reducing your honey supers. If you have extra boxes, so you put boxes back onto your hives to let the bees clean out from your honey harvest, now's the time to start thinking about reducing the size. And if you have honey, can continue to sell it. Pollinator plants for September. Some good stuff. I've been noticing some really awesome plants. We got a desert rose that's right outside my office here, just blooming magnificently. So that one is kind of an interesting one. Not on this list, but sweet autumn clematis, my vitex trees, they are looking fabulous right now. And the tide vine morning glories, those are doing really well. Rose of Sharon, goldenrod. Have you seen goldenrod? I haven't seen any pop up lately. Although I am seeing a lot of snow on the prairie. Just saying hello. How's it going, Nanya on the back 20? It was good to meet you yesterday, by the way. It was an interesting thing yesterday. So happy that you're here. Roosevelt weed. That's an interesting thing to have for bees too. Fall asters. Rattlesnake master. I did a presentation on rattlesnake master a few years ago for Trinity Valley beekeepers. So that's a good one. So those are some good suggestions for pollinator plants for September. We should be seeing a lot of that stuff pop. Thanks, James. I haven't seen the goldenrod. I've seen some yellow flowers, but not the goldenrod yet. The pollinator plant that I want to spotlight is a Texas sage. Man, have you seen the Texas sage? Those things are magnificent right now. We had a little bit of rain, and as soon as we had that rain pop, man, the purple flowers just came out all over the place. I need to plant some. I want to get some purple sage or some Texas sage here at the homestead. Just to kind of talk about that a little bit, it's a shrub. I'm going to share some pictures here. Well, full sun or partial sun or partial shade. Doesn't need a lot of water. You can put it in as a hedge, a border, rock gardens, privacy screen. There's a lot of uses for the Texas sage. It's got blue/lavender, pink. I call them purplish, but pinkish purple, I guess. It's a native, so that's a good thing around here. Bees and butterflies, man, I tell you, there's a couple of these outside my bank that we go to up the street, and they were just covered in bees when I was up there the other day. It's an evergreen, and it'll get to about 5 feet, spread about 5 feet, and get to be about 6 feet tall. Just a few pictures of Texas sage. It goes by a couple different names, by the way. There are some other variants of sage, but the sage plants right now are really good for pollinators wherever you are. Just the way that some of these people have trimmed up their sage looks pretty amazing. Just those purple flowers are awesome. Yeah, drought was definitely hard on just about everything. That's for sure. um, let's see, what do we got? Killer bees. I'm going to be talking about killer bees as we talked about earlier. Um, how often do we see these headlines come up? These are just some that I pulled off fairly quickly online. Killer bee attacks and leaves one dead. You know, warning: more killer bees, killer bees, killer bees. There's that story about the Ohio guy that came out of a coma, was put into a coma for being stung. Just incredible. I know I've had some mean bees before. um, they aren't any fun to work with. That is for sure. The number of bees that come out when there is a colony like that can really be disconcerting. It can be scary. It can leave you in a panic if you're not careful. If you're not used to dealing with the mean bees, um, they can be something that can change your beekeeping career. I definitely, as a when I have experienced that, it made me think twice about being a beekeeper. That's for sure. We had some one instance where we had a hive that was 4 stacks tall, and I let my neighbors know that we had some mean bees and I was going to be dealing with them. And they were really nice. They were basically saying, "No worries, no worries. We really like the bees. We're glad you have them." And the next day, I saw my neighbor, and her face was swollen. They were just it was just awful. One had come up and gotten a hold of her right under her eye, and the whole side of her face swelled up, and was not good. And that was before I had ever harvested a single bit of honey. So I told her, I said, "You get my first bit of honey ever," and she did. And they've been really good about it. And we had to deal with those bees, and we'll talk about that a little bit further here. I did some research on bee sting deaths in the United States. Every year, there's an average of 62 deaths from bee stings. And when I say bee stings, they also consider wasps and bees and a few other stinging flying creatures. Wasps and bees are the main culprits. 62 deaths on average per year. And that was just counted through from 2000 through 2017. And side note here, you can see this chart. It's by far men that are taking the brunt of that. I don't know what that says, but certainly 80% of the deaths from bee stings were male, from men. The term killer bee, man, I tell you, that's it's all for drama. I think killer bees are Africanized honeybees. They came through to the United States from South America. They were doing some research down in South America, Brazil, and 26. What I've read was 26 swarms were able to leave their quarantine. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. If any of you know, how do you quarantine honeybees and do research unless they're completely enclosed? I just can't fathom how they were trying to quarantine these bees. But anyway, they had 26 swarms that left that location, and they have constantly been making their way north. This little graphic of the United States actually is an animated GIF, and it was supposed to show the spread of the honeybees. But right now, we know for sure they're in California, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and maybe Ohio. Who knows? They haven't confirmed that, as far as I know, that attack up in Ohio. I don't know if it has been confirmed yet. I know they sent some bees off for testing. Africanized honeybees are typically much more defensive than other varieties of bees. By the way, I do know that there are several that I have run across beekeepers that love the Africanized or the mean honeybees. They will say that they build more bees, they build more comb, they build more honey. And I can say for sure that the mean bees that I've had here, and I've never tested any, but the mean bees that I've had definitely fit that. They definitely grew a lot faster. They grew a lot bigger. They drew more comb faster, and they definitely brought in honey. So there may be something to that. Um, that just makes beekeeping working with bees. It makes it really suck. If you have mean bees and you're a beekeeper, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, Africanized honeybees definitely display certain behavioral traits that make them less desirable for commercial beekeeping. I wonder why that is. Certainly defensiveness and swarming. Um, they definitely they outcompete their European counterparts for sure. That's become the main type of bee for beekeeping in Central and South America, which that's pretty interesting. I mean, they probably don't have much choice at this point. I don't know if you could control the genetics um, and be able to overwhelm the native bees that are out there, which are going to be those Africanized honeybees. So definitely the dominant kind for Central America, Central and South America. Let's talk a little bit about the Africanized honeybees as opposed to the Western, European, Italian honeybees. They tend to swarm more frequently, and they go further. They migrate as part of their seasonal response to lowered food supply. They're more likely to abscond. Greater defensiveness. That's one of the things, one of the tests. I know, James, you're here, and we've talked about this before. When you get a swarm and they start to get into your equipment and start to get established, just keeping an eye out for that defensiveness. You can run your hand over the frames and see how your bees react. If you start to see some response, there may be something to keep an eye on. I think we get some early warning signs when our bees have some genetics and the Africanized. I think you can start to get some definitely get some indication that there might be something going on there that you need to keep an eye on. And I know that we've talked about that before. They guard the hive entrance aggressively. That's the one thing I will say too, is that the mean bees, the Africanized bees, I think that they tend to have a lot more guard bees. And we talk about that there. I did make note of that down here, have a higher population of guard bees. There's no question about that. If you start to get into the hive and you get into that defensive hive, you're going to know it usually pretty quick, because there are a lot of those guard bees, and they're going to come out very quickly and in numbers. So there's definitely some things there, and we're going to talk a little bit about that again here in a couple of slides when we're talking about beekeepers and dealing with mean bees. Deploying greater numbers, we were just mentioning that. There's a note here that I read where it says they can't survive extended periods of forage deprivation, or it basically keeps them from going out to colder climates. I'm not sure about that. I think that there's going to be some slowing down of their progression into those colder areas. But I think there's a lot of research being done as to whether the Africanized honeybees can actually get into those colder climates. I think Ohio might be one of those examples. It's not. It definitely gets cold in the winter. They get snow, but we get cold here too. And I don't think that that's necessarily going to slow those bees down. And thanks for coming. I hear you. I know I see your comment there about the chickens. I got to go check mine tonight too. Thanks for coming there. So anyway, let's keep going. There's definitely some traits that we can keep an eye on. Do mean bees equal killer bees? Sometimes I think when I get into a hive with mean bees, that they want to kill me. Does that make them killer bees? No. That's for sure. I think anybody that knows has done some beekeeping, especially around here in Texas or where there are the Africanized honeybees. We know that there's normal Italian. Let's say there's hybrid, where some of those genetics might have spread from the Africanized into the native population, um, but they aren't. The Africanized bees. So mean bees, that does not mean that they're killer bees. Just because they get hyper defensive doesn't mean they become Africanized. Although we talked about this over the past couple of years, we've seen some evidence of the Africanized bees coming into a weakened hive and taking over a hive where you might have had good bees, maybe even let's say docile bees that you bred into you got the queen, the genetics, and you've been doing some work with that, and all of a sudden you get a really mean hive. Um, there's some evidence where those Africanized bees come and take over the weaker hives, or the ones that are more docile, they'll just come and run them out. Um, but there are a number of reasons why bees might become mean. Let's say hyper defensive. They could be queenless. They could have a high mite load. We talked about checking our hives for mites. If you've got a high mite load, there's definitely some indication that could cause some aggressiveness or hyper defensiveness in your bees. Resource protection. We've just come out of this really bad. I don't know if I won't say all the way out of the dearth here in Dallas Fort Worth, but there's definitely a lack of resources. And if a hive had some, I could see where you could get into a situation where those bees would want to protect the resources they have. I did have one of my hives that got robbed out about 2 months ago. Just got overwhelmed. Just the number of bees that came in and took over that hive, it was pretty crazy. A high population. The bees could have outgrown their space, and you might need to add some space for them. That could cause some attitude adjustments. Let's say weather. Definitely some issues there. Improper hive manipulation. We want to be, I don't want to say we don't want to be extremely gentle, but we want to be careful and aware of what we're doing when we're working with our bees. If you start knocking things around, killing bees, you're going to start releasing that pheromone, and that warning pheromone, and the bees can take exception to that. So improper hive manipulation could be another reason. Predators. I know I have skunks around here for sure. I keep my hives up off the ground at least 14 to 17 inches just for that reason. And there could be other reasons why a colony could become hyper defensive. Can you tell the difference between a normal honeybee and an Africanized bee? No, you can with scientific study. You can send them off to be looked at, the genetics, and get them over to a scientist. But looking at them, if you were to look at them, there are some generalities we're going to talk about. But to be able to tell just by looking, I don't think we can tell by looking at a bee whether it's Africanized or just a mean bee, or the difference between Africanized and European. Without that testing. Some generalities that I've seen, so they're somewhat smaller. They've indicated about 10% smaller bee than the Italians or the native bees around here. They're more responsive to perceived danger. Some people would say aggressive. I prefer to say hyper defensive. I think aggressive implies that they want to come out and kill you, and hyper defensive is, there's a reason why they're sensing a danger. They stay agitated longer. Certainly, when you get into a hive, you're moving some things around, and you can get some issues, and the bees may not like it. And if you're in them for too long, they can tell you that you've been in there too long. So they can come out and get agitated. The really mean bees, Africanized, they can stay mean and hold a grudge for hours. Typically, a hive will clear. You get out of it and you shut things up. Within a few minutes, it's kind of back to normal. The aggressive, hyper defensive Africanized bees, they can stay agitated for a whole lot longer. They are more opportunistic foragers. Whatever they can find and take, they will. They tend to swarm more often and smaller swarms. I've talked about this in a couple of my videos where we talk about swarm traps and putting the right size swarm trap out. If you've got small swarm traps, at least in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, probably anywhere there's Africanized bees, there's a good chance that you might get a smaller swarm, and those smaller swarms can, that there's definitely some opportunity for having those genetics come in there. So it's one of those things you need to be aware of when you go out to catch swarms. Make sure you got the right size swarm traps and be aware of those smaller swarms. It's something just to keep an eye on. Not all small swarms are going to be mean, but it's something to be aware of. Attacked by bees. What should you do if you get attacked or you witness bees attacking somebody? You definitely want to get away from the situation very quickly. The bees, the Africanized bees, the mean bees will definitely follow you for a long time. Yes, I've seen that too. Thanks, Egg. Okay, like to go to the ground boxes more often. So their swarm traps or boxes that are down lower tend to attract or can tend to attract those Africanized bees. They have some indication, some research that I saw, I didn't include in here, where they were saying that the Africanized bees almost prefer ground cavities. And I don't know that I believe that, but it's certainly something that they're aware of and there's some research on. So thanks for that. But if you're getting attacked by bees and you're not a beekeeper, because I'm going to talk to you about being a beekeeper here in a minute. But if you're an individual like this person up in Ohio or out in the field in Texas, you hear these storms all the time. Through these stories. Get out of that situation as quickly as you can. If you're running, try to protect your head, your eyes, your nose, any of the sensitive areas. If you need to, pull your shirt over your eyes up to keep your eyes and ears, your ears, eyes, and nose protected. Those bees will come after you there, and there's no doubt about it. Especially if you're making a lot of noise. Running, screaming with your mouth open may not be the best idea, but definitely get out of that situation. Continue to run. Don't stop until you reach shelter. And make sure you get into someplace. If you go into a shelter, you're probably gonna have bees that are following you in there, but it won't be the massive numbers that are coming after you in attack. Don't jump in the water. That's you see that often. I know in shows and cartoons and stuff like that. Water won't be your friend. They will just wait for you on the surface of the water, and you stick your nose up and you're dead. They will still come after you. They'll be waiting for you. So don't jump into the water. Don't swat at the bees. Don't flail your arms. Their bees are, definitely attracted to the movement. And any that you hit and crush is just going to release more pheromone. So don't swat at the bees. Just run and get out of the situation. Once you've reached the shelter, then you can start looking at your stings, getting the stingers out. One of the things I want to talk about too, that I saw mentioned, I know we as beekeepers often are told, don't squeeze the stingers, scrape them. Just get a credit card, a knife, whatever, scrape them off. And if you can do that, that's great. Definitely, that's the way to go. But if you don't have that and you've got lots and lots of stings and you need to get those stingers out, it's okay to grab them with your finger. We know that the sac is going to still continue to pump venom into your skin as it's there, and you want to get them off as soon as you can. But don't let the fact that you don't have something to scrape them off stop you from scraping them off or getting them off. So that's just one note that I had come across. And then I found this interesting too. The average person can safely tolerate 10 stings per pound of body weight. And I've never seen this quantified before, like I had seen this note. Basically means that 500 stings for a child can probably be okay with that, and up to 1,100 stings for an adult. So I've never seen that quantified before. So it was an interesting note, and I wanted to put it here. Tips for beekeepers. If you guys are beekeepers, this is something that I ran across, and I kind of put some things together. And I know, James, we've talked about this before, and I'll talk to you about my situation that I had a couple of years ago. So, what should you do if you have Africanized bees as a beekeeper? Um, One first thing you do before you do anything. Oops, let me go backwards here. Protect yourself and anyone with you or anyone nearby. Um, if you're dealing with Africanized bees or even just mean bees, European hyper defensive bees, you can come out of your house or wherever you're out 200, 300 yards away, and they can find you and they'll be there waiting for you. Not even the Africanized ones. So before you do anything, definitely protect yourself and anyone with you. If you know you're going to be working on a mean hive, work slowly, purposefully. Try to avoid crushing the bees and releasing that pheromone, because that will just get that whole cycle going. So you want to try to avoid that if you're working with that colony. One thing you can look at doing is requeening the hive. Yeah, let me tell you. Let me start here. I had that hive I told you about earlier that was 4 stacks high. That was really mean. We had 4 beekeepers fully suited up in my backyard going through that hive just to find the queen. And it took a while. When the bees are hyper defensive and they're out and you're messing with the hive and you're trying to get it dealt with, it's going to be fairly chaotic. There's going to be bees all over the place. Having some help, extra beekeeper or two to go through the hives and looking at the frames for that queen can be, if you can do it, that's definitely the way to go. We had 4 guys in my backyard. I say it's 3 guys and a lady beekeeper. So, but I was so thankful for their help. And we went through every single box, every single frame, and guess where she was? She was in the very bottom box. And I don't remember which frame she was on, but we had to go through every frame, through every box until we found that queen. We actually were able to find her, and we sent her off. So she left the property that night. But it's one of those things you have to work carefully and slowly and purposefully, and requeening that hive. If you can find that queen to get the genetics out of that hive, definitely something that you should be looking to do. If you have mean bees or hyper defensive bees, no matter what, if you're wanting to try to save that hive and want to requeen it, you need to get those genetics out. So you need to find that queen and get her out of there. Another thing you can do is split that hive. The same one I was talking about, this 4-box hive with the mean queen. I went from having 5 hives that night to having 25. We broke that hive down into 20 splits. And it was pretty crazy. Just, a couple of frames in a box, set them aside, and, taking all those bees and separating them, which kind of goes to this next number, to this thing, next bullet point: reduce the number of bees in the colony. Those bees, as we talked about earlier, tend to make a lot of bees really quickly. So if you can reduce the number of the bees within a colony, it does a couple things. One, there's fewer bees, and 2, there's fewer guard bees, or they're spread out. So it's one of those things that you can, help your hive and working with it, the mean bees, by reducing the number. In this case, I actually sent at least 2 full 5-frame nukes of bees out off the property, and they took them, out to where there were no neighbors. I have neighbors within 300 feet. I guess they're 400 feet apart, both sides and back behind me. We have about an acre and a half, acre and a quarter here. So even still, my neighbors were getting stung with those beehives, and splitting them off, reducing the number, definitely helped reduce the anxiety and the number of stings everyone was getting. So that's just a couple of tips to do that, and if you want to save that hive. Lastly, there is obviously the option to dispatch the whole colony, and that happens from time to time, where you just can't. You're in a situation where you might have be in a neighborhood. You can't have those genetics around. People are getting stung. If it's Africanized, you probably want to get rid of them anyway. But there are times when you have to just dispatch the whole colony and just call it done. Reclaim the hardware, the frames, anything resources, but those bees got to go. So there are some options for doing that. I don't talk about how to do that, but there are a number of ways you can do to take care of that that you can find. So that's the big stuff. Do we have, as beekeepers, an obligation to protect others from known colonies or of mean bees or Africanized bees? It's an interesting question, and when I was putting this together, I was thinking about this. In my case, I told my neighbors I had mean bees, and whenever I have a situation where I think I might have mean bees, I always let my neighbors know, because I don't think, in my case, I don't want them to come out and suffer from being stung because of my activities and on my property. So it's that's a question that I wanted to put out to you guys. Do you think we have an obligation to take care of that? Should we take extra caution or extra care for those mean colonies or Africanized bees? Do we have some responsibility for that? It's just an interesting question. I think in my case that, for me, I let my neighbors know for sure, and then I take care of it and make sure that those bees are dealt with one way or another. They're either moved off property or broken down or replace the genetics. And the other thing that I've come to do on my property is I don't let my bees open mate. I can't let swarm cells come to fruition and let the queens come out and do mating flights. I know in my area that there is, I don't know if it's one colony or if it's a number of native colonies that have those genetics that come in to make hot bees. So whenever I have a colony that is either a swarm or sticks with me for a year, I replace the queens. I just can't risk it. I've had too many bad experiences with mean hot bees. So when my queens get to the point where the colony's either swarmed or they're with me a year, I replace the queens and with known genetics. That might not, I don't know if a lot of people do that, but for me, it works. I know the bees that I get, I know the genetics, I know what to expect. I know that if I'm going to open a hive, I'm typically not going to have it blow up in my face. So that's one of those things that I do. And that was pretty much the stuff that I had for tonight. If you guys have any questions, I'm certainly willing to sit here and we can chat about it. I hope you found it interesting. And if you have an opportunity to give me a like or a thumbs up or a subscription on my channel, that's always a good thing. But I appreciate it. Not needed. I'm going to do this whether that gets done or not. But really appreciate you guys coming here and hanging with me tonight. So it's open. If you want to chat, I'll just remove this down. I've got my honey collection here behind me. I'm looking forward to sharing some honey with some people. I brought some honey back from Italy. I was in Italy in April, so I brought some saffron honey and some wildflower honey back from Italy. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with some people. So good times for sure. So I'll wait here for a minute or two and see if there's any questions. But I just like hanging with you guys and talking about bees, garden. If you have any questions about the garden, it's been fun. By the way, I know we don't have fig wasp around here, but I've got a lot of figs, and we've been doing a lot of harvesting of figs, and that's a really positive thing I've been focused on today. We had a bunch of those today. So I'm not seeing anything come up, but I appreciate you guys taking the time. James, what you got? Um, I found you use a BVAC. That's a good idea. If you use the BVAC to pull off the guard bees, that will definitely. I can see that being good. I know you showed me your new BVAC. I haven't seen it in action, but that's pretty fancy gear there. um, I might have to have you come in and we'll do a shared host where you can share some of that stuff. That's really I like that outfit you got. It looks very portable, and I think it's better than your other one that you had, for sure. Cool. Well, I guess I'm going to wrap this up and just thank you guys for hanging out with me. And we'll do this again next month. We'll do a little bee chat and share some good stuff. One of the things I'm trying to do is see if I can get somebody that's has some experience with apitherapy, bee sting therapy, and maybe bring them online with us. So I'm really interested in that. It's one of those topics I've found fascinating. And I know several people that have had some bee sting venom that have helped them, whether it was by choice or just by career choice, that have helped them tremendously. So it's one of those things that's been interested in finding somebody that can talk to me about it. So, by the way, if you happen to know anybody that has some interest or experience with bee sting therapy, I'd love to talk to them and maybe we can bring them online and share some experience with them. So, other than that, I will let this meeting go and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks, and you guys have a great night and appreciate you. We'll see you soon.